Hey everybody. So last episode I talked about the little-known YouTube search term My Edited Video, which returns a variety of obscure videos from many different sources, some of which are quite old. But let's be honest, in the grand scheme of things, these videos, the entirety of YouTube's existence, hell, even the World Wide Web and the internet itself, have so far just been a small temporal blip along the full chronological scale of human history. While our rate of development may have increased substantially in the past few decades, changes have been taking place as far back as we can document history, and nothing truly stays the same for any reasonable length of time. Well, almost nothing. You see, there exists within the holy city of Jerusalem a several hundred-year-old ladder that cannot be moved, and indeed, with a few exceptions, hasn't been moved for almost the entirety of its existence. And the reason for this has its roots in a situation nearly 2,000 years old, which we'll be talking about today. Now, the city of Jerusalem and many of the sites therein are extraordinarily important to virtually every Abrahamic faith in the world, featuring heavily in the religious texts of all Christian, Islamic, and Jewish denominations, and hosting a massive number of religious rites and traditions. But you see, there's a small problem. Nearly everything in the city is contested. There are locations that are significant to multiple different religious orders for multiple different reasons. The Chapel of the Ascension, the Dome of the Rock, and many more such places have significance to many groups, none of whom can agree on who exactly should have ownership. For centuries, this has caused war, infighting, and upheavals both religious and political. The city and its holy sites have been captured and recaptured and destroyed and rebuilt countless times for the past 2 millennia without a peace being reached. But what the hell does any of this have to do with a ladder? Well, I'm getting to that. You see, in the year 1757, after changing hands a number of times, Jerusalem was under the control of the Ottoman Empire, and it was during this year that a monumental change would occur. On Holy Week of this year, Ottoman Sultan Osman III would issue a firman, essentially just a royal decree, which in essence declared that several sites within Jerusalem were to remain undisturbed and entirely unchanged unless a consensus could be reached by all groups who laid claim to them. This was reaffirmed close to a century later with 2 more firmans by Sultan Abdul-Majid, received international recognition with the treaties of Paris and Berlin in 1856 and 1878, and was given more formal terms even after the fall of the Ottoman Empire by a post-World War II UN commission. This state of being became colloquially known as the status quo. Although defined inconsistently depending on where you look, it has for the past 300 years effectively put a freeze on changes of ownership and alterations of 9 religious sites within Jerusalem and Bethlehem. And this is where we get to the ladder. Let me draw your attention to the dispute of ownership surrounding the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. This almost 2 millennia old structure is said to be built on the site of Golgotha, where Jesus was said to have been crucified, and additionally contains what's believed by many to be the tomb Jesus was buried in post-crucifixion. Understandably, the Roman Catholic, Armenian Apostolic, Greek, Coptic, Ethiopian, and Syriac Orthodox churches all lay claim to the site, and as such, it is subject to the status quo, meaning nothing about it can be altered without permission from all 6. But this also includes things that may not have been part of the church to begin with. It's believed that the ladder first appeared in 1728, alleged to have been set up by a mason doing work on the church. The ladder can be seen in all its glory in this 1728 engraving of the building's facade. It's constructed of Lebanon cedar, around 8 feet tall, and for all intents and purposes, is really nothing out of the ordinary. By 1757, it was, of course, still there, said by some historians to have been used by clergy to get out onto the ledge during nice days. And because it was in place when Osman's firman was issued, the ladder became subject to the status quo as well. No member of any church could move it or alter it in any way without incurring the wrath of all others. This may seem a bit odd, but the general reasoning behind it is that if any one church is given permission to make even a tiny alteration, it could cause the others to make their own changes in retribution, and could eventually spiral into complete anarchy and destroy the status quo entirely. In a weird way, the latter being frozen in place could very well be what keeps the current agreement intact. And so it stayed there. We can actually sort of track the ladder throughout history thanks to a number of sketches and engravings that were made throughout the centuries. Here's an 1842 lithograph showing the ladder, here's a photo of it in 1885, and here's a photo taken within the last few years. Throughout the time it's been here, the ladder has seen over 10 Ottoman sultans come and go, and it's seen the empire itself collapse in the aftermath of the First World War. It's seen Jerusalem be besieged at least 4 separate times, and has seen the city change hands time and time again. The world has drastically changed around it, and during all this time, it's just sat there, entirely untouched. Well, almost untouched. There have been, on occasion, slight violations of the ladder's status. In 1997, an unidentified individual allegedly entered the chapel behind the window the ladder is propped up against, and took it inside, hiding it in order to make a statement about the divisiveness of the current agreement in the city. There does, in fact, exist video proof of this event happening. The ladder was put back in its original spot once found, and grates were installed over the window in order to deter future attempts. But it didn't quite stop here. In 2009, for some unknown reason, the ladder was found to be resting against the left window instead of the right for a very short period, during which some rare, limited-time photos of the moved ladder were captured. But it was of course moved back to its classic resting place promptly, and it remains there to this day. No major disturbances have occurred in the time since. I suppose the reason this is all so interesting is the fact that this ladder, in quite literally any other circumstance, would have been completely and utterly forgotten. Beyond its age, there's nothing about this ladder that really makes it any more significant than something you'd pick up at Home Depot for $60. It was left on the windowsill out of apathy and remained there for years because it was convenient for the clergy, and it remained ordinary until it was suddenly and unexpectedly struck by an event entirely unrelated to itself in the spring of 1757, after which point it inexplicably became so much more important than it had ever been before. Very often this is just the nature of history. We can't really control what is remembered and what isn't, and the most inconsequential of objects and locations can become infamous and recognizable for reasons entirely out of our control. In 2014, a Winchester lever-action rifle from the late 1800s was found leaning against a remote tree in a national park in Nevada. It had been resting there for over a century, entirely undisturbed, and once found, received national news coverage and secured a spot in a Nevada museum. The rifle's original owner has never been identified, and they certainly had absolutely no idea when they left their rifle leaning against that tree 140 years ago that it would one day become more famous than they would ever be, joining the immovable ladder and countless other ordinary objects from throughout history that, through some stroke of fate, have left an impact far beyond what their original owners could have ever imagined. Thanks for watching.